As is our custom throughout the summertime, we're continuing our series of inviting congregants to speak, sharing different aspects of their lives, whether professional or personal, or sometimes a blend of the two. And so it's my honor tonight to invite up our speaker tonight, David Levin. I've known David for quite a while now, pretty much since we moved to town. Our sons were in preschool together and now are quite good friends many moons later. And by trade, David practices law, but I think one of the most fascinating aspects of his legal practice for a number of years, and I think this is some of what you're talking about tonight, so I don't want to give too much away. One of his biggest clients was Burning Man, handling the contracts and all of the various legal aspects of putting on a massive concert, building a city in the middle of the desert, and definitely has fascinating stories about that as well. So I won't say too much more. It's my pleasure, David, to welcome you up to our bima.
Did Burning Man's Larry Harvey find the lost commandments? So who can forget that scene? Can everyone hear me? Okay. Who can forget the scene from History of the World Part 1 when Mel Brooks, dressed as Moses, comes down from Mount Sinai and proclaims, "All pay heed, Lord, the Lord Jehovah has given you these 15. Boy, we know what happens next. He drops 5 of the commandments on the ground, and without missing a beat, he says, "Behold these 10 commandments for all to obey." So I was 17 years old when I saw that movie, and I was an inquisitive young teenager, and my first question was, what were those other 5 commandments? Furthermore, how do we know there weren't more? Moses is an old man. How do we know he didn't stumble and drop 5 more on the way down? While we know from biblical scholar Brooks that there were more than 10 commandments, and I wonder to this day what those other commandments were, we may be in luck because our local popular culture might have come up with the answer. In 2004, the founder of Burning Man, Larry Harvey, articulated 10 principles that would become the spiritual underpinnings for Burning Man. Now, for those of you who have never heard of Burning Man or Larry Harvey, Burning Man it's just like the musical Brigadoon. Out of nowhere, a city appears. There are women with colorful dresses. There are men wearing kilts with no underwear. And after 7 days, the city disappears, only to reappear again in the future. No, but seriously, Burning Man is a temporary city and an experiment in temporary culture with the goal of to translate that culture that came out of this event in the desert into the larger world. The underpinnings of Burning Man, as I said, are these 10 principles, which I just want to share with you in summary form. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about a couple of them in detail. The 10 principles of Burning Man are as follows: radical inclusion, gifting, decommodification, radical self-reliance, radical self-expression, community effort, civic responsibility, leaving no trace, participation, and the 10th is immediacy. Immediacy, right now. So now that you know these 10 principles of Burning Man, I ask you to ponder with me, could these 10 principles be the missing 10 commandments that Moses dropped on his way down from Mount Sinai? Well, Rabbi Heath referenced that I'm a lawyer, so I'm going to give you a lawyer-like answer. And that answer is, it depends. But I'm not going to answer that question. I'm going to reformulate the question, something that lawyers do all the time. They change the question to fit the desired answer. And I'm going to do that again. To me, the more personal question is, are any of Burning Man's 10 principles suitable for adoption as social commandments for our Betham community? And my answer to that is a resounding yes. I believe there are at least 3 principles that our Betham community can and should adopt as social commandments. The first is radical inclusion, and I'm going to read to you what radical inclusion is. Anyone may be a part of Burning Man. We welcome and respect the stranger. No prerequisites exist for our community, for participation in our community. Well, how does that apply to our Betham community? Well, it's similar. Just like you don't need an invitation or to be vouched for by anyone to become a member of the Burning Man community, you don't have to be nominated or approved to join the Betham community. But while everyone can join the Betham community, is that enough for radical inclusion? What more can be done if we're going to embrace radical inclusion as a social commandment? For example, what if I don't believe in God? What if I'm not even sure I'm Jewish? What if I don't have the money or social standing to feel comfortable in such august surroundings? So while the atheist and the working class can join Betham, it's not just about granting access. Radical inclusion is not the grant of access. Radical inclusion requires a continued graciousness and an accommodation. So that's radical inclusion. Another principle that I would put out there for you is called decommodification. Now, this is a tough one. I'm going to read to you what decommodification is in the words of Larry Harvey. Our community seeks to create social environments that are unmediated by commercial sponsorship, transactions, or advertising. We stand ready to protect our culture from such exploitation. We resist the substitution of consumption for participatory experience. Well, what does that mean for Burning Man, and what does that mean for us in our Betham community? Well, decommodification is not about anti-capitalism. It's about creating a space without commodities and the capital to purchase those commodities so that other kinds of social transactions can flourish. At Burning Man, this means there is nothing for sale except ice. What does that mean for the Betham community? Well, I doubt Rabbi Heath or Rabbi Sarah are going to sell the naming rights to the sanctuary. We don't have to worry about that. But decommodification is something more. Again, it's taking the capital and the commodities out of our experiences to leave space for other kinds of social currency. To me, what decommodification would look like in our Betham community is that your financial success in the world does not measure your importance in the Betham community. Temple events aren't networking opportunities. And consumption is not a substitute for worship or other participatory experiences. The last and the most important principle that I ask you all to try on this evening is the principle of immediacy. Immediate experience is in ways the most important touchstone value in our culture. We seek to overcome barriers that stand between us and a recognition of our inner selves, the reality of those around us, participation in society, and contact with the natural world exceeding human powers. No idea can substitute for this experience. The most important touchstone value in our community, immediacy. Judaism is replete of examples with this concept. Rabbi Hillel understood the importance of immediacy when he ended his famous pronouncement, "If not now, when?" In fact, Rabbi Hillel foretold many of the 10 principles of Burning Man. For example, Rabbi Hillel said, "If I am only for myself, who will be for me?" Well, that sounds like radical self-reliance. If I am only for myself, what am I? Well, that sounds like social responsibility, civic responsibility. And then finally, that grounding, gut check question, if not now, when? Immediacy. Immediacy, Larry Harvey acknowledged that immediacy is the foundation for all of Burning Man's 10 principles, and I dare say all of Judaism's 10 commandments. What good is radical inclusion if it doesn't happen now? How do you honor the Sabbath and keep it holy if you don't start tonight? Immediacy. So going back to my original question, did Larry Harvey find the missing 10 commandments? Perhaps. But to my reformulated question, are any of Burning Man's 10 principles suitable for adoption as social commandments for our Betham community? My answer is a resounding yes. Tonight, I hereby submit to this Betham community the social commandments of radical inclusion, decommodification, and immediacy.
Thank you, David.